Hello, Mark. Welcome to Singapore.
Thank you, Kristen.
And it's a great honor for me and PolkaWorld to have a very short interview with you.
Well, thank you. My honor as well.
How have you been going, you and your fund?
Well, the Scytale Polkadot Ecosystem Fund is about to launch. We're finalizing the documents. We have agreement in principle with Web3 Foundation, so we hope it'll be launched within the next 3 weeks, hopefully, maybe by the beginning of October, latest by the beginning of November. In the meantime, we've been very, very active. Researching different investment strategies. We have a deep pipeline of potential investments in the ecosystem. Maybe you saw a tweet that went out that we've agreed to terms with Hyperbridge. So that'll be the first investment of the fund. And I think there are a number of worthy teams in the ecosystem, and the ecosystem has been short of capital recently. So I think this is something that can be a difference maker for the ecosystem.
Okay, you choose the Hyperbridge to be your first investment. So what are your overall investment strategies when it comes to Polkadot?
Yeah, so when it comes to the fund, it's a double mandate. So one is for the benefit of the Polkadot ecosystem. That's clear. So DOT is being invested. We should do something to help these DOT become more valuable. And then also for profit. So every single investment that we make has a target to be profitable. Now, of course, if it's a venture type investment, it's also very risky. And so the target profit has to be up a little higher than a liquid type investment, like we'll be doing DeFi in the ecosystem and actively supporting that, actively increasing the TVL in different DeFi solutions, and which the target to make Polkadot more attractive for others. That's really the gist of it, right? So we know already that the technology is extremely functional, and there's evidence of that others are adopting the technology. And we also know that the brand name is a bit challenged at the moment. Like the most successful projects on Polkadot don't always mention the name. Like Astar, core technology is Polkadot. They great team, and they're not hiding that they're there, but they're not really promoting that either. Teams like Centrifuge, which we're very close with, are doing amazing things. They've just announced that one of their subsidiary type projects called Anemoy Capital, the investment manager will be a multi-hundred billion dollar investment manager called Janus Henderson, which is a US UK company that's very well known in TradFi. And there was a press release from them last week mentioning that the tokenization of funds can be the next ETF. Like the next boom in ETF, and it just makes too much sense, but not too many people see it so far. So we're also exploring, offering this fund in a tokenized format as well, probably partnering with Centrifuge and Anemoy. So just it gets back to the original point that Polkadot is already attractive from a technical point of view, and then with the onset of Agile Core Time, and then Jam in a year from now, the barrier to entry will be much, much lower than it was during the parachain auction phase. So I think we'll see many more independent type teams building their solutions on Polkadot because it's attractive to do it. And we want to kind of speed that process up and move it along.
Yeah, it is true that Polkadot technology is very attractive. But I think the adoption doesn't live up to everyone's expectations.
Absolutely. And why is that? Right? And I think the answer is on the user end, the interface has not been as easy to use or attractive as some competing ecosystems. but I think a lot of that is being addressed. So I don't know like which wallets you use in the Polkadot ecosystem, but now they're much better than they were when people were stuck with just Polkadot.js. The new Polkadot app is going to be rolled out by Parity pretty soon, which is going to be dead simple to use and look good. And I think then we'll see much more actual retail adoption. Because if you look at it, like there was no B2C from Polkadot in the beginning, right? So individuals could just buy the token, they could stake it, they could vote on governance, which is already a lot, but you couldn't do much more than that. And now, and the target customer for Polkadot were parachain teams, right? And they would end up locking up a lot of DOT in parachains. As that parachain mechanism goes away, we're moving toward a much more open and dynamic economy of the Polkadot token itself. And it's becoming sufficient in as a gas token in more solutions as well, like with DeFi. So you only need DOT to be able to do things on Asset Hub, for example. And this is just becoming adopted, right? So Asset Hub and the stables on Asset Hub are just being rolled out on different centralized exchanges.
What do you think is the role that OpenGov plays for drives the mass adoption of Polkadot? And
so OpenGov is interesting. There's nothing else like it anywhere else. It's very much experiment in action, and I think it's dynamic. So I think, the early feedback is that, only whales control this. One whale in particular is driving things and just doing whatever he wants. And now there are so many more voices involved in it, and so much more professionalism in the proposals themselves, but in also the follow-up proposals. Now, of course, there'll be things that not everyone agrees with. That's sort of how things work in political systems, and it's essentially a political system. And we're part of a number of efforts there. So one of them being, business development, which was funded by Decentralized Futures, but is active in OpenGov. We have decentralized voices that we've been very active with and trying to be a little bit more conservative than like the status quo. And we're involved as an advisor, or will be involved as an advisor, to the new marketing bounty, which probably is getting proposed today, or at least this week. And the idea is really to bring in much more professionalism and much more accountability into the whole OpenGov process. I've been working on at least mentally, if not writing, and about something called the Polkadot Accountability and Improvement Network. So that's P, Polkadot, A for accountability, I for improvement, and N for network, and that spells pain. And we call it the House of Pain, because when going into OpenGov and adding responsibility and an accountability and a real strategy, like an articulated strategy behind the spending, is going to be painful, because we know there are a number of teams or people that were getting things passed and then not having anybody follow up with it, and who doesn't like free money, but this sort of like inefficient spending, it doesn't help the ecosystem, it only hurts it. And we really want to make this a dynamic force for good and for the broader ecosystem. And I think this is a very strong benefit for the whole ecosystem to have it. And even when someone loses, like Chainalysis. So we were supporting the last version of Chainalysis. It still didn't pass by a small margin, but we are going to get it anyway, whether we get specifically Chainalysis or another KYT provider. It's coming to Polkadot. We're going to have this graph of transparency. It's already transparent for those technical enough to be able to look at it. But for an ETF to happen, for institutional regulatory compliant adoption of Polkadot, we need to have this kind of compliance, and it's absolutely coming. And so, through open, so there was no, let's say there wasn't enough organic demand for Chainalysis to do this, but one of the ecosystem agents reached out to them because they had a client, a bank in, it's a well-known bank, which is a subsidiary in Turkey, that wanted to issue Polkadot on their platform, but they can only put it on their platform if they have Chainalysis support. And so what I think a lot of the nuance that was missing to a lot of the OpenGov voters was that not having this support is blocking the growth of Polkadot. And of course, the counter argument is, well, we want to have we don't want to pay them, first of all, and the value, the price is not commensurate with the value. Maybe that's true, but in my mind, the value is much bigger than the price, because then we can have a lot when the demand comes, and the demand is coming. I'm a very strong believer that as Agile Core Time comes into play, and as Jam becomes clearer what it's going to be, many, many more teams are going to opt to build and to develop on Polkadot, because it's just industry-leading technology, and it will be industry, like say, low barrier to entry, usable technology, and that's going to create an amazing explosion of growth.
Yeah, sure, I agree with you. And it is obvious that OpenGov plays a very important role for driving the Polkadot ecosystem. So, what is your fund focus so that can make a difference? Or what does the role your fund play a part of the OpenGov to drive the Polkadot ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think like the simplest role outside of the liquid side, so we want to provide Polkadot returns plus, staking rewards plus, using DeFi, and that's a challenge with the inflation at 10% and staking rewards somewhere between 15 and 20%, depending on the percentage staked and the optimal reward. It's hard to do that with DeFi, but there are still some options where it can be done, and so that's one part of it. Because there's, I don't know if you followed OpenGov, but there's a discussion about reducing the inflation rate, which will reduce the reward rate for staking, and then I think that'll make DeFi more attractive. But what we really want to do on the private investment side, or the early stage investment side, is to do a lot of work with the teams that are building on Polkadot, a lot of work with them on optimal strategies. We want to share a lot of research with third-party investors. We want to write the lead ticket and then invite other investors in. And so that's one of the things that we're actively working on, because there is this image in the market that if somebody's building on Polkadot, that people won't invest with them. And that's absolutely, at the same time, true and not true, right? So it is easier to raise liquidity in different ecosystems, absolutely. But in the end, every investor just wants to make money. And if we can show that Polkadot is an ecosystem where investors can also make money, then that will break that narrative right away, and we'll get more and more investors. But we need the first few coming in and making money. And for the previous fund, that was one of the big motivations behind investing in mythical games, right? And so this is a high-profile successful company that's getting more successful by coming on to Polkadot. And once that becomes obvious, and I think probably in 6 months to a year from now, it'll be very obvious, and then everyone's eyes will be on Polkadot. But really, what we want to do is attract other investors, other value-added investors into every round that we do. And how can we do that? So we're trying right now. We'll see. We've already have. So I mentioned with Hyperbridge, we're talking to a number of other investors, and we will talk to more to get the round filled out. It's really important that we have high-quality investors because each one has its own network, and each one can really be a value add.
Yeah, too. We are also trying. Let's try together to make Polkadot great again.
Yeah, so we're really open and want to work actively with every team because we have a bunch of different things that we're doing, from the OpenGov side to the business development side to the marketing side to the academy side and also the investment side. So yeah, there's a lot to be done. I think this ecosystem is especially attractive because of the level of decentralization and the role that anyone can come in and play if they're just like really active and adding value. There's room here, and there's room for many others to join the ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for your time today, and then let's build together.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kristen.